Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. And, of course, you can find the Full Court Press and our subsidiaries, football, basketball, and MMA, on Facebook and Instagram as well. Hell of an Elite Eight this year. Pretty good tournament, actually. All the way around. Really, the Sweet 16 is when things really started to pick up, and we started to get some phenomenal basketball games, a couple of OT games. So it was a great NCAA tournament, especially going into the latter part of it. And as far as, I don't know how many people did this. Me personally, I didn't, because I'm not a chump. You know, when you get to do the Sweet 16 and you get to redo your tournament, right? Basically repick from what you have left in the bracket. I didn't do that because I'm a man, bro. That's why. I stick by my picks. That and all four of my teams from all three brackets that I had. Well, four if you incorporate the one that I let my brother do, which I think we all do that. I think we all have somebody that's like, hey, man, you want to do a bracket? And he literally knows nothing about sports. I mean, that's not his thing at all. He just kind of, like, I was like, hey, man, you want to do this? And he's like, what the hell, might as well. So he did one, and which, by the way, his was horrendous. But so now I guess you can incorporate his. But at this juncture, I had all of my Final Four teams in. The main bracket that I had Michigan and Michigan State in the Final Four. I had Virginia in the Final Four, and I think, was it Kentucky or something like that? I mean, after about the second round, I generally don't pay too much attention to where I'm at. Obviously, as a journalist, it's just more about keeping up with what's going on and all that. But I think good tournament all the way around. Phenomenal Elite Eight. But I will say this, a bit of a odd looking Final Four this year, right? Not your typical teams, Texas Tech, Auburn, which, by the way, I think is great for the game of basketball. I think we're going to see, I'm somewhat into the ratings, I'll point it out from time to time, but I think we're going to see some ratings are going to be really good this year, especially given the performance that Auburn had. A lot of hustle plays from Harper and Brown. Michigan State out-dueling Duke at the end of that basketball game. Zion Williamson, obviously still a huge topic of discussion for a lot of people. He played phenomenal throughout the tournament. I don't think there's any question about what his future could be. Regardless of whatever he wants to do, I'll support it. He's come out and said that thanks, but no thanks to people who think that he need to focus on the NBA. What his commitment level is like to Duke long term, we're about to really find out, obviously, with the NBA looming over the top of him. But from what I saw, he was absolutely phenomenal. So here's how I pick my brackets. This is what I usually go with. I usually go with teams that I think are better defensively, first of all. Hence why I picked Michigan and Michigan State, which is odd because I was very critical of Michigan State being a 2 seed, right? But I looked at a couple of things. One, I looked at where they were in the bracket. I felt that they were actually in a very good situation. Then, of course, the other thing I looked at was defensively, their depth. And then the other thing that I always like to go with are teams that rebound and make a lot of hustle plays. I know that some people are going to say, well, if you went defensively, how come you didn't take Texas Tech? Well, I didn't take Texas Tech because I looked at the Big 12 and I saw how KU was this season. And I thought, for them, for KU, very mundane year, not near where the expectation was for them throughout the season. Then you look at some of the other teams that are usually pretty good, OU, Oklahoma State, Texas. Very mundane performances from those teams throughout the season. Then, you look at Kansas State, very hit and miss under Coach Weber. I thought they were kind of given a gift-wrapped seed. Given what they did last year in the NCAA tournament, I still believe that they were probably going a little too far by giving them a 4 seed. So I really wasn't a big believer in the Big 12. Matter of fact, I don't think I had any Big 12 team going past the second round. I really did not. And I stand by that decision, obviously, even though Texas Tech made it as far as they did. As far as Auburn goes, again, I looked at the conference that they were coming from. The SEC, there's always an expectation for Kentucky, and deservedly so. And under Coach Calipari, they have not missed a beat since he's taken over that program. I looked at Tennessee, thought they were pretty good. I didn't think, though, that they were as deep as a lot of people were making them out to be. And then, of course, I'll be honest with you, I completely overlooked Auburn. Charles Barkley, somewhere right now, is still celebrating and salivating over his alma mater making it to the Final Four. So shout out to Charles Barkley. But I got to tell you, for my money, I didn't see it. But their coach, Bruce Pearl, I really love his energy on the sideline. When I was watching the Elite Eight and I was watching him and he was getting the crowd very involved early, and understand they overcame horrible play at the beginning of that game to win. I mean, the second half was 100% theirs. It was the tale of two halves, that old saying, right? 100% theirs. The first half, not so much. Last couple of minutes, you could probably give it to them. But to kind of put things in perspective, they didn't score. I think it was 2 points is what they scored in the last 4 minutes of that ball game, even in the second half, as good as they were. So they overcame a lot to be able to win that basketball game. And Bruce Pearl energy, I thought at the beginning, could maybe come back to hinder them. If he could keep that emotion up through the whole game, which he did, then great. But if not, I felt like maybe he would burn himself and his team out early. But it ended up working in their favor. And I like Auburn being in the Final Four. I like Texas Tech being in the Final Four, even though I didn't pick those teams, because from a fan standpoint, it's great to see some of the unusual suspects in there, right? And then one of the other things that I always pick is I always pick an East Coast team every single year, period. I didn't pick Virginia because I didn't like their style of play for the tournament. So I think this year I went with Marquette in one of them. But regardless of that, you can't prove me wrong that an East Coast team doesn't always end up in the tournament at some point. I mean, they shine when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Case in point, UConn, Syracuse, Louisville, even though they're not an East Coast team, they're in the ACC. You know, they were in the Big East for a while. So the tournament play speaks for itself. Who the champions are, who's consistently in the Final Four. So I want to know, how does your tournament look? How does your bracket look? How many teams did you get in? I will be watching the Final Four because, and I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be rooting for Auburn and Texas Tech, even though they're not who I picked to be champions. I will be rooting for them because it's great. You know, you've got basically what are considered some underdog teams in there, even though 3 seed, 5 seed, it's still a bit of an odd looking tournament. You got a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 5. It's really weird, man. But regardless of that, if we see anything like what we saw in the Elite Eight, I think it's going to be exceptionally entertaining of a Final Four. So I'm looking forward to it. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Additionally, you can always find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. You can find the Full Court Press and our subsidiaries, football, basketball, and MMA, on social media as well. And when you share my posts, don't forget to use the hashtag Don't You Dare Touch That Dial. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.